Hi. So I will show you some pictures now, and I want you to shout out where you think those pictures are coming from. Yeah. Okay, Gezi Park. So Gezi Park protests hold a special place in the Turkish politics of the last 10 to 15 years. Because in the protests, the Turkish public, disregarding any demographics, came together for the first time to stand tall against the conservative government, despite the government's efforts to oppress the protests. So let's go to the beginning of the story. Before the June 2011 elections, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who was the Prime Minister of Turkey at the time, who's currently the President of the Turkish Republic, said that Gezi Park will be turned back into what it used to be 40 years ago, which is in Turkish, Topçu Kışlası, and the direct translation would be, and emphasis on direct, is artilleryman barracks. So 2 years later, in April 2013, when he was asked about this project, he said, "Whatever we said then, we will make now." And he continued to say that those artilleryman barracks would be an Ottoman-style shopping mall. So the government did a close bidding on the construction of the shopping mall, and Kalyon Construction won the bidding for 52 million liras. And just a fun fact there, Kalyon Construction also won the close bidding on the construction of the third bridge. So let's take a look at the timeline. On May 27, 2013, construction began, and 5 trees were cut down in Gezi Park. Actually, they were pulled out of the ground, and that night, 50 people from Taksim Solidarity Group camped in the park to stop any more trees from being cut down. On May 29th, the next day, police interfered, and on May 31st, the protests began. And it was only June 8th that the protests ended. So Gezi Park protests, as all social and political movement that brings change, are an example of mass hysteria. Because mass hysteria unites people around a single cause, when manipulated correctly, mass hysteria is the key to any grand change. So what is hysteria? The American Heritage Statement's medical dictionary defines hysteria as spontaneous, en masse development of identical emotional symptoms among a group of individuals. Now, from May 31st to June 8th, the same emotions monopolized the Turkish public. Now, tell me how you felt during the protests, and please do tell me. Excited, maybe? Anxious? Inspired, okay. Proud. Okay. So when I asked my friends the same question, the majority of answers that I got was excitement. Now, of course, I felt excitement and you felt excitement because Turkey was at the edge of grand change against the government. We were re-obtaining our liberation, and we were breaking free from the conservative walls that the government has been building for the last decade. And maybe you also felt fidgety, and I'm not saying maybe, I know this for a fact, you all did. Everyone wanted to be in Gezi Park, everyone wanted to join the protests, and actually everyone did. Schools had unofficial field trips to Gezi Park to join the protests, and every evening at 9 p.m., people all around Turkey, especially in Istanbul, went on their balconies and performed a casserole demonstration. As it turns out, that's what it's called. What they did was they took kitchen utensils from their kitchens and they hit the back of their stew pots with their spoons, and they produced a large collective noise. Now, this is a quote from activist Mehtap Doğan, who was at the protests during the week. Gezi broke down the wall of fear. For the first time, people were disappointed when they were not in the park for a police crackdown. Everyone wanted to be there and support everybody else. Now, apart from excitement and fidgetiness, you probably felt panic. Why? Because you didn't know what was going to happen, and no one knows what would going to happen after the protest ended. What if the protests actually succeeded? And this is not to say that it didn't succeed, they definitely did. But what if it brought material change? Then what would happen now? What would be the next step in Turkish history? You felt even a little bit anxious. You felt anxiety because pepper gas, water cannons, and plastic bullets were present at the Gezi Park. Turkish Medical Association reported on July 15th that at least 8,163 people were injured during the protests. Now, out of those people, at least 63 of them were in serious or critical condition. At least 3 of them had the risk of death, and about 200 people received head and brain traumas from the police battle blows and tear gas canisters. Now, setting aside all of these, you all felt emotional excess. Now, here you can see, and this is what Gezi Park is, and this is what Gezi Park was planned to be, and this is what the protests were against. Here you can see a child rather, who is punching, who is hitting the police tanks, the huge police tank. And now here's a screenshot from a video who got a lot of public attention. A man, an older man, is hitting the police tank with his head. And after this image was taken, he was shot with water, high pressurized water, which broke his ribs. So you think about it, how can a single man, in fact a single child, come against a whole police tank? It's made of iron, it's heavy. How can you do that? Well, you can't, and you know that you can't. But the emotional excess you're feeling prevents you from thinking about it that time. So this emotional excess is exactly the definition of hysteria. You all felt the same things during the protests. You felt anxious, emotional, you felt panic. And that is why you were all in this scheme of mass hysteria. Now, what started out as a protest against the destruction of nature turned into the symbol of resistance of Atatürk adherents, and not particularly Atatürk adherents, against the conservative government. It became a catalyst for grand change, and most importantly, Gezi Park protests nurtured and still do nurture the seed of a new Turkey. So, maybe you are looking at my title and thinking, how is Salem witch trials any related to this? Well, let's go across the Atlantic Ocean and move 400 years back. So Salem witch trials started in spring of 1692 when some girls, and I'll later name them, said that accused women of lower ranks with being witches. And they said that those women were conversing with the devil, were engaging with the devil. And fortunately, during the trials, records were kept. So we know everything that was said, and we know everything that was taught. So Salem witch trials shows hysteria in action. Why did those young girls accuse women of being witches? Because those young girls, in particular 12-year-old Abigail Williams and 9-year-old Betty Paris, her cousin, had strange tremors and fits of anxiety. Now, Reverend Hale from Beverly came and said that these tremors, these fits, could not have been caused by a natural cause. Now, hysteria is the example of snowball effect. When you started, just give a little bit of suggestion, it will grow and grow and grow. So the suggestion of Beverly Hale that maybe these tremors were not caused by a natural cause started all of this process. And 19 people were hanged because they were accused of being witches. Behind me, you can see names of those who were accused and who were hanged. Now, let's look at how everyone felt in Salem witch trials. We looked at how everyone felt during the Gezi Park. Now, you may be detecting some patterns. So, in Salem, everyone thought they were doing the right thing. And I'm saying thought because being witches is not real. So it's actually what they just thought was correct. Now, everyone felt special because they were hunting witches down. They were doing the God's work in their own village. And everyone thought that they were contributing to the cause and working against the devil in the name of God. Now, but in Salem, why did everyone give in to collective hysteria, to mass hysteria? Now, certainly people, maybe they didn't completely believe that witches didn't exist, but maybe just a bit they had suspicions of the existence of witches. But why everyone gave in to mass hysteria in Salem is a much more and profound reason. Hysteria gives people a sense of purpose. Now, in Gezi Park, the purpose was to protest against the government. And in Salem, everyone united around a single cause. So why did everyone do that? Well, let's look at colonial Massachusetts in 1692. I want you to, and here is Massachusetts, somewhere around here. Massachusetts was, this is not the original map I wanted, but still. Colonial Massachusetts was literally at the edge of America. And Massachusetts, and I want you to empathize with those who were living in Salem, Salem was surrounded by forests, and Puritans, who were the community who were in Salem, who was in Salem, thought that the American forest was the only place on earth who wasn't paying homage to God. So there was a scare of the forests. Now, your soil was rocky, and you couldn't, in order to do agriculture, you had to work really, really hard. There was no unsuitable ground for food. You had mild, short summers, but you had long and very cold winters. And by very cold, I mean they didn't have windows. That cold. Now, Puritans, going back to them, they had no novelists, and they thought, and even if they had a book, no one would be willing to read the book. No one would be brave enough to read the book. They didn't believe in vain entertainment, and that includes theater, because in Massachusetts, at the time, you didn't have many things to do. And their life purpose was to work, always work. Even on holidays, they replaced work with prayer, like 24/7 prayer. Now, why did the Salem community give into hysteria? Because they were looking for something more. Now, I actually want you to answer this question. Do you think Salem trials were any good, or any good could come out of it, or do you think it was all bad? Okay. People who think that the hanging of 19 people in Salem was all bad, raise your hands, please. Okay. A bit higher. Okay. Majority of the people. But who thinks that any good could come out of the mass hysteria in Salem? Okay. Well, some good actually came out of mass hysteria in Salem. Actually, not some good, a very big good. So theocracy's function is to, in Salem, theocracy's function was to keep community together. It was to prevent any kind of disunity that might open Salem and Salemites to destruction by material or ideological enemies. Now, Salem witch trials actually shattered that theology, that theocracy. Arthur Miller, in his book The Crucible, says that the witch hunt was a perverse manifestation of the panic which set in among all classes when the balance began to turn toward greater individual freedom. So Salem witch trials was the cause of the panic around individual freedom, breaking out of the community. So Salem witch trials, even though 19 people died, and the deaths of 19 people were horrible, But it wasn't all bad. It caused theocracy to shatter in colonial Massachusetts. Now, the reason why hysteria is so compelling is because it unites people around the cause. People search for meaning, for a reason to exist. I'm sure all of you are going through the same things, even if so many time has passed. And hysteria gives people that reason. Hysteria eliminates fear of what can happen and focuses people on what will happen, on the hope of change. Now, if you were present at the Gezi Park during the protests, were you afraid of getting hit in the head by a water canister? Probably not. You didn't think about it. Now, was Samuel Paris, who was the minister who worked in the hanging of these 19 people, afraid that hunting down people who dealt with the devil would bring devil to him? No, he wasn't. He didn't think about it. He was hysteric. He only focused on the cause. Now, hysteria also creates awareness, brings people together. Did every household in Salem know about witches, about witchcraft? Probably not, but they definitely learned after the trials. Did everyone in Turkey realize the increasingly authoritative state that Turkey was becoming? No, but they definitely did after the protests. And the most important aspect of hysteria is that it eliminates individuality and it starts collective effort. Now, do we say one particular person caused the Gezi Park trial, the protests to start? No. And did one particular person cause the hangings of 19 people in Salem? No. When we talk about Gezi Park protests, do we say Alevis and Kurds and Turks and Armenians and Muslims and Christians, homosexuals, women, men wearing a headscarf, or feminists did what Gezi Park became? No. We say be public. It's because mass hysteria brings the public together. It disregards any demographics. And this is why mass hysteria is the key to any grand change. Thank you.